magic flute. Perhaps Mozart's most brilliant work. He spoke of it on his deathbed. Yet when it opened in Vienna, 1791, it was dismissed by many as nonsense, full of strange symbols and bizarre rituals. But a small elite group of men understood its meaning all too well. Some have suggested that they were outraged, perhaps even to the point of causing Mozart's death.
These men belonged to the largest secret society in the world, as did Mozart himself. As in Mozart's Vienna, we too are audience to a world in which familiar objects carry hidden significance. Of the hundreds of people you come in contact with daily, at work, socially, on the street, how many of them belong to this same seemingly invisible society, recognizable only to each other by secret words, signs, or a handshake? The dollar bill in your pocket, for example, bears symbols whose origins we don't quite understand. Thanks a lot. Yet to one organization, it means a great deal. History often appears to be a random series of events, but digging deeper, we find startling connections among the men behind many of the world's most important episodes, leading us to the question, what hidden forces generate much of the world's history? Every day, thousands of people pass by this building, located in one of the largest metropolitan areas in the world. But how many of them understand the peculiar symbols it bears, or the organization it shelters?
Like this room in Evanston, Illinois, painted with 19th century motifs, branded an alternate religion, the Antichrist, the force behind a subversive plot to dominate the world. This group is no mere historical oddity. Even today, it has more than 5 million members worldwide, nearly 3 million in the United States.
In small towns and large, buildings of similar intent exist quietly in the hearts of communities all across this country, and in countries all over the world. Where did they come from?
I traveled from a farm in Kentucky to the libraries and museums of England in search for the answer to a great mystery of 14th century Britain. In 1381, 100,000 Englishmen got up from the table at the same time and marched on London. They burned down manor houses, they burned down monasteries, they cut the heads off anyone who got in their way, and even went so far as to take the city of London and its tower. A number of leaders of the revolt confessed to being members of a great society that was behind the revolt, and historians have agreed that there was organization there, but no one has any idea what it was. Who organized the Peasants Revolt?
Who indeed?
Yeah, can you hold on for a minute? Now remember, this is 14th century feudal England. There was no radio or telephone communications to rally these uneducated people. Yet suddenly, as one, this people's army rose up and struck back at their oppressors. Now, if you're going to organize a revolution, one of these little devices may come in handy. Unfortunately, for the English peasants to make use of it, they'd have to postpone things for about 500 years. So, how'd they do it? Well, if you don't have technology to help you communicate, the only other option is a vast, complex underground network of people.
One important piece of evidence uncovered was the especially vicious attacks the rebels made on the properties and the people of the Knights Hospitaller of St. John, a monastic order we call today the Knights of Malta. They went miles out of the way to burn down their mills and manors. They dragged their Grand Prior out of the Tower of London and struck off his head. Question was, who could possibly hate the Knights Hospitaller that much? And why was it a central feature of the revolt? The answer to that question would tell us who the Great Society was, and more than that, would reveal that it still exists today, but is known by a different name.
When you hear a rap on the door, you may remove the handkerchief. I wish you success.
Left alone, Pierre continued to smile as before. The 5 minutes he spent with bandaged eyes seemed to him like an hour. His hands swelled and his legs trembled. What was going to happen to him seemed terrible, and he was still more afraid that he should show his fear. Twice he raised his hands to remove the handkerchief, inclined to remove it. He was filled with curiosity to know what was going to take place, what was going to be revealed to him. But above all, it was delightful for him to think that the moment had finally come when he...
And so Count Pierre Bazoukoy enters the Brotherhood of Freemasons. This scene from Tolstoy's War and Peace describes the complex emotions felt by millions of men all over the world as they stood blindfolded before the inner door of Freemasonry. What sort of institution could attract men from every social rank, race, religion? Where and when were the first links forged in this chain that has united men from all nations for over 3 centuries? Or longer.
The origins of Freemasonry, nobody knows for sure. Some of our writers have attempted to trace Masonry back to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, to the ancient Mayans, to the Egyptians, to the Druids at Stonehenge, and yet these have to be exaggeration. They're lies. Plain and simple, these people are lying and making up for their lack of knowledge with an overactive imagination. No one knows for sure. But in 1849, an historian named Hallowell discovered in the British Museum an ancient manuscript, then called the Regius Poem. One passage translated from the original Middle English reads, "The craft came into England, as I now say, in the time of good King Athelstan's day." Now this would place Masonry in England somewhere about 926 AD.
So we've got millions of men, from feudal England to pre-communist Russia to contemporary America, all undergoing the same rite of initiation in buildings emblazoned with the same mystic symbols. And all of this happening right under our noses. How'd they manage to keep this thing a secret? Those in the Masonic fraternity have another way of identifying themselves, by a certain type of handshake.
One theory, probably the most often heard, is that Freemasonry grew out of the stonemasons' guilds of the Middle Ages. Those who propose this theory explain that in those days, secret words, signs, and handshakes were used as identification. That way, a master mason from a distant location could prove himself worthy of being hired and paid a master's wages. It was a simple but highly effective security system.
And security in those ancient times was just as important as it is today. More so, in fact. For in the 14th century, a temporary lapse in security could mean far worse than losing next year's hot new design. In those days, you might be the hottest thing on the block.
The only organization I could find in the entire history of Great Britain that would have reason to wreak bloody vengeance on the Knights Hospitaller of St. John was a rival military crusading order called the Knights of the Temple, the Knights Templar. The problem with that solution was that the Templars had been totally suppressed and brutally suppressed 70 years before. Was it possible that some remnant of the Templars, some underground organization had survived that would wreak this vengeance on the Hospitallers? To answer that one, it was necessary to go back and learn something about the Knights Templar. They were a military monastic order who fought in the Holy Land. They were necessary because, as you can see here, when the medieval sword clashed with the Arab scimitar, it was done by pilgrim crusaders, men who came to fight for a month or 6 months or a year and they went home. If they conquered a town, there was nobody to hold it. There was need for a standing army. And the answer was met by means of a military monastic order. Men signed up for life and took a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience. And their entire lives would be devoted to fighting for the true cross. The Templars answered only to their own Grand Master, not to the laws of any land, and their Grand Master answered only to the Pope in Rome. For their headquarters, the King of Jerusalem had given them the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount that marked the place where Allah had ascended into heaven, but it was built squarely on the site of the Temple of Solomon. And from that location, they took their name, the Poor's Fellow Soldiers of Christ, and the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. They solicited gifts from the church and from noblemen and crowned heads of Europe, and they were so successful in that endeavor that they ended up owning over 9,000 mills and manors and market towns in Europe, and were the leading owners of land in the Holy Land. The Templars had all this property, had their own ships, were in constant communication, transferring large sums of money, and they developed codes in which they wrote. They developed passwords. It annoyed other people that when they met in a secret chapter room, and outside the door of the room stood a Templar knight with a drawn sword in his hand. They had developed an intricate society with intelligence services, secret operations, secret correspondence, and that turned out to be the ideal background to have for what would come a few years later. And in 1292, the Crusaders were pushed entirely out of the Holy Land, and the Templars had lost their purpose. What they needed to regain that purpose was another crusade. And when Pope Clement V summoned their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, to Paris, he thought he was going to restore the glory of the Templars. What he was really going for was trickery and deceit and chains. Now, Pope Clement V and Philip IV made a plot to grab the Templar order and everything that belonged to them. And in doing that, they gave rise to a new superstition that we still honor today. Back in October of 1307, when on Friday the 13th, which was certainly the unluckiest day of the year for the Knights Templar, all of the Templars in France were arrested at dawn. Their torture for confessions of heresy began that very same day. All of the property of the Templars, all the manors, towns, and marketplaces, all the castles and churches that had belonged to the Templars went to the Hospitallers, which are bound to make any Templar furious. It's not surprising then that a secret society would come from this, because this period of torture and burning at the stake lasted for 7 years. So those men who were in hiding had to have a way to hide all that time. But they had a great base of knowledge to draw on. They had operated a secret society for a long time, for a century or more. And so we find that the secret society of mutual protection formed by the suppressed Templars erupted in the Peasants Revolt. and had a very good reason for wreaking vengeance on the Knights Hospitaller of St. John. Only in Great Britain did the Templars have months of warning and have plenty of time to get organized and go underground to avoid their arrest and torture by the Inquisition. And there's a great deal of evidence to indicate that the secret society they formed for their protection survived and lives today as Freemasonry.
This play reflects the spirit of those crusading warrior monks. Is there evidence linking them to those medieval artisans who so carefully guarded their trade secrets?
In all of history, there are only two organizations who have found their principal identification in the Temple of Solomon, and that's the Knights Templar and the Freemasons. Here is the Seal of Solomon, the seal that would have appeared on that mighty temple. And if you want to turn the literal Seal of Solomon into an allegory completely confusing to the outsider, it's only necessary to remove the horizontal bars, and suddenly we have the square and compasses.
The square and compass, in its current interlaced form, is not all that old. It only came to be recognized as a Masonic emblem near the end of the 18th century. Rather than being a direct link with Solomon's Temple, they were simply two very important working tools of an operative Mason.
Thus, all the work that Solomon made for the house of the Lord was finished. And so the Bible tells us that Solomon finished his temple. The pyramid found on the back of our $1 bill is in fact a Masonic symbol representing King Solomon's temple unfinished. Why this denial of biblical history? What work remains to be finished?
Much of Freemasonry's allegory and symbolism in the present day center around King Solomon's temple. It is the link which binds our speculative craft to the operative Masons of long ago. Our speculative Masonry teaches us that every man is incomplete, an unfinished temple, and using symbolic tools, his task on earth is to finish the work. Symbolically, we see every Mason as a builder of his own spiritual temple.
While its origins may be argued, Masonry's emergence from secrecy is indisputable. London, 1717. 4 Masonic lodges formed the first Grand Lodge of England. Masonry quickly spread, or was revealed throughout the world, attracting an impressive number of very famous men. According to the book 10,000 Famous Freemasons, the list includes such men as Danton, leader of the French Revolution; Giuseppe Garibaldi, hero of the revolution that united Italy; Juarez of the Mexican Revolution; Simón de Bolivar in South America; and in the territory that became the United States, George Washington, Mason. It does kindle an eerie feeling that perhaps the strings of history are being pulled by some invisible force. And thousands more. Scientists, artists, philosophers, clergy, all leaders in their fields, belong to this so-called secret society. The great German philosopher and poet Johann Goethe spoke these final words on his deathbed: "More light, more light." Goethe, a prominent Mason, knew well the Masonic significance of that phrase. Sadly, he implored for more light from a bedroom whose window overlooked a place of great darkness, a field where a century later many innocent men women and children would be imprisoned, murdered, Buchenwald. Genocide. That was the goal of the fanatical Nazi hatred. 6 million Jewish people tortured and killed by unspeakable methods. Another 6 million non-Jews met the same fate. Among both groups were men who, besides their religious or national origin, had yet another mark against them in the eyes of the Nazis: the so-called crime of being Freemasons. Despite the risk of torture and death, Masons continued to meet even in the prison camps. Here, for a brief period, was the true secret society, whose very existence had to be kept secret. These meetings probably came closer to the reality of the ancient lodge meetings than any other Masonic functions of the past 2 centuries, especially because they met only for a specific purpose, as briefly as possible, and were motivated by mutual protection and assistance. Had their secrecy been broken, punishment for all would have come swiftly.
Man möchte euch jetzt danken, euch Feinde, durch euren Mut und eure Herrlichkeit, als des Volkes und Vaterlandes Retter zu wollen.
Why was the world's most powerful war machine, which seemed to fear no other nation, so terrified of Freemasonry?
No totalitarian government can ever tolerate a secret society of any kind. Certainly not one such as Freemasonry, which encourages individual thought and freedom of conscience. Throughout the ages, Stalin, Franco, Mussolini, and Hitler all outlawed and vigorously persecuted Freemasonry.
But the persecution was not left unchecked. During World War II, scores of soldiers from the Allied nations were Masons, led by Masons. Roosevelt, Churchill, MacArthur, Bradley, Marshall, Stilwell, Clark. Mystery is the essence of human nature. Whatever is presented to people under mysterious guise will always arouse curiosity. But those who join the Masonic Lodge from idle curiosity about its secrets risk growing old without ever achieving their purpose. Yet there is a secret, one so inviolable that it can never be confided or whispered to anyone. The man who wrote these words was one of the most educated and eloquent men of the 18th century. Playwright, scholar, duelist, inventor of the state-run lottery, poet and statesman. Though today he's known for something entirely different. Giacomo Giovanni Casanova was also a Mason.
For his heresy, he was jailed in the infamous prison Il Piombi, the Leads.
2 years later, Casanova escaped, the only man ever to penetrate its impregnable walls. Was such an escape possible without help? Perhaps from influential brethren?
Within 12 years of Casanova having been made a Freemason, the first attack on Freemasonry came from the Roman Catholic Church, an attack that led to an entire series so that no fewer than 8 papal bulls and encyclicals condemned the Masonic order, culminating in 1884 with the most dramatic of them all, a bull of Pope Leo XIII. That bull accused the Freemasons of a variety of unacceptable acts, that the Freemasons believed that people have the right to make their own laws. Freemasons believe that people have the right to elect their own rulers. Freemasons say that all religions are to be treated equally. The Freemasons say that laymen can teach children. And they believe all these strange and unacceptable things, and a quote, according to a new principle they call liberty.
If these principles sound familiar, it should come as little surprise that no less than 8 signers of our own Declaration of Independence were Masons, as were 13 signers of the Constitution.
What is surprising, startling in fact, is the vast yet unseen role that Masonry played not only in the history of the United States, but also in the lives of world and cultural leaders.
Supreme Ruler of the universe, we would reverently invoke thy blessing at this time. Wilt thou be pleased to grant that this meeting, thus begun in order, may be conducted in peace and closed in harmony? Amen. So it be.
Accordingly, I now declare the lodge open for degree work. Brother Junior Deacon, inform the Tyler. Brother Senior Deacon, arrange the lights.
The call to adventure signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of his society to a zone unknown. Joseph Campbell, from his book Hero with a Thousand Faces, a title equally appropriate for the story of Freemasonry in America. Campbell also wrote, "It is not society that is to guide and save the creative hero, but precisely the reverse."
Dank auf der Schar, die uns wachte, der Tugend lang anfachte, und uns zum Beispiel war, aus deren jedem Krieg auf ihren Lauergang ein Fädes Bruder.
Tyler is informed.
There's certainly been no shortage of Masonic heroes in American history. To cite just one example, Freemason Andrew Jackson, as President of the United States, sent his Masonic brother Sam Houston to Texas to help their Masonic brothers Steve Austin and Buck Travis. They were joined sometime later by their Masonic brother Davy Crockett. And in the ensuing Texas Revolution, 7 Freemasons died at the Alamo. But they finally won, aided in some cases by the products of their fellow Mason, Samuel Colt. And history has remembered the event, partially because it was memorialized by Hollywood by another Freemason, John Wayne.
Apollo 11, this is Houston. How do you read? Reading loud and clear, Houston. How are
1969. Heroes of another kind. Explorers in the greatest voyage of mankind. Piloting the Eagle. Astronaut Buzz Aldrin. Mason.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger.
13 of our presidents were Masons, beginning with the first. The Bible, on which Washington pledged himself as a Mason, and then our chief executive, is the one on which presidents still swear their oath of office.
At this very moment, in foxholes and on shipboard, beneath the sea and in the air, countless hands are being clasped in fraternal recognition as brothers find one another in the darkness as well as in the daylight. And countless fathers, bravely wishing Godspeed to their departing sons, are saying, "Boy, when your hour of darkness and loneliness comes, find a Freemason and tell him you're the son of a Freemason, and you'll find a friend."
President Harry S. Truman was not only a dedicated Mason, he was Grand Master of the Freemasons in Missouri. What did die-hard individualists such as Give-'em-Hell Harry Truman find in Masonry? Why is it so popular in a country that prides itself on its independent pioneers? Montana, 1862. Gold is discovered. Lawlessness follows. And the only law was this. The town of Bannock, desperate for help, hires a likable man named Plummer as sheriff. But rather than restoring order, he repays the citizens' trust by establishing a network of ruthless criminals, a ranging band of thugs who perpetrate hundreds of murders, rapes, and other atrocities upon the very people who trusted him. Meanwhile, 12 men, 11 of whom were Masons, signed a secret oath, strikingly similar to their Masonic obligation, vowing to stop the criminals. Led by prominent Freemason N.P. Langford, the Montana vigilantes cleared the territory in only 4 short months, and then returned to their normal lives. Their work is memorialized in the Montana Highway Patrol emblem 3777. Some say this refers to the vigilante warning that outlaws would soon occupy graves 3 feet wide, 7 feet long, and 77 inches deep. Was there a direct Masonic connection to the vigilantes? More importantly, were they acting as individuals or as a mob? According to the Masonic Declaration of Principles, the true Freemason will act in civil life according to his individual judgment and the dictates of his conscience.
There is no such thing, nor has there ever been any such thing as a lodge acting as a group for any personal or political ends. What you have are men who enter the fraternity with a belief in God, by whatever name they may call the deity, and a strong sense of justice and kindness for the whole of humanity. Those values are reflected and refined in the principles of Freemasonry. So when you add leadership qualities to this mix, you find men from revolutionaries to presidents acting as individuals, pursuing the idea of individual liberty in politics, in religion, and in thought. It's no wonder that tyrants have always considered Freemasonry their mortal enemy.
Masonry has been opposed in America as well. Anti-Masonic propaganda has been fueled by the Masons' tradition of ignoring these attacks. Critics of Masonry call this silence a confession of guilt, while Masons believe their good deeds will outweigh the propaganda.
In 1831, the anti-Masonic Party nominated William Wirt for president. Ironically, Wirt himself was a Freemason who never renounced his membership or spoke against Masonry. The party disintegrated after Wirt lost to Andrew Jackson, one of the 13 U.S. presidents who have been Masons.
Brotherly love is one of the three principal tenets of Masonry. It is absolutely fundamental to a Mason's character. And incidents of Masons putting this tenet into action during times of crises are plentiful. During the Civil War, there were hundreds of stories showing that Freemasonry alone remained undivided, where Masonic soldiers risked their lives to help a Masonic brother, even one from the opposing camp. Many times, the two sides united after a battle to give a Masonic burial to a fallen brother.
His love and protection around those who put their trust in him. Soft and safe be the earthly bed of our brother. Bright and glorious be his rising from it. Fragrant be the acacia sprig which shall flourish there. And in the bright morning of the world's resurrection, may his soul spring into newness of life and expand into immortal beauty in realms beyond the skies. Until then, dear friend and brother, until then, farewell.
A beautiful and poetic ceremony, the Masonic funeral service. No cross, no Star of David, nor any other religious markings. Both the famous and the unknown in cemeteries all around the world rest in eternity beneath this symbol. Is it a mark of religious faith?
Freemasonry is not a religion, and it's not a substitute for religion. And that can be proven on a very simple basis. Religious denominations tend to believe that they are unalterably right and that everyone else is unquestionably wrong. Freemasonry, on the other hand, takes the position that there is some truth in all men's perception of God and declines to say that any one belief is superior to another. That's why the most important qualification to become a Freemason has always been and always will be that a man must first avow his belief in a supreme being, in a monotheistic God. But how he worships the God of his belief is his own business and not to be discussed in the Masonic Lodge.
Masonry is open to men of all races and religion, providing that they express a belief in the existence of a supreme being. One famous example of Masonry's universality was expressed when Rudyard Kipling was initiated in Lodge Hope and Perseverance in Lahore, India. At that time, the holy books of 5 religions lay upon the altar.
According to scholar Joseph Campbell, Freemasonry is an expression of mythological thinking, a scholarly attempt to reconstruct an order of initiation that result in spiritual revelation. He continues, a ritual can be defined as an enactment of a myth. By participating in a ritual, you are actually experiencing a mythological life, and it is out of that participation that one can learn to live spiritually.
As Masons, we say that truth is a divine attribute and the foundation of every virtue. And truth is an exploration into the fundamental principles of our ritual, which teaches truth. Men who couldn't read nor write in the Middle Ages, through our ritual, through our symbolism, absorbed the deeper meaning of truth. And truth is one of the very, very fundamental things about Freemasonry. We say to be good men and true is the first lesson we are taught in Freemasonry.
Masonry's compelling ritual, symbolism, and formal structure has been adopted by many organizations, falsely creating the appearance of a connection between Masonry and these other groups, many of which are honest and honorable organizations doing important work within their communities. But there are others who have mimicked Masonry for unethical, even criminal ends.
1981. Italian banker Roberto Calvi hangs from the Blackfriars Bridge in London, triggering an investigation that reveals the largest banking swindle in history. The official report calls it suicide, but rumors surface. Conspiracy. Ritual killing. The Masons.
The mastermind was Licio Gelli, a Mussolini fascist and former master of the Italian Propaganda Due Lodge, remembered as Lodge P2. With a network of powerful politicians, bankers, and publishers meeting under the auspices of the Lodge, Gelli brings together Calvi, who heads the Banco Ambrosiano, Michele Sindona, a leading financial advisor to the Vatican, and the head of the Papal Bank. Shell companies are formed. The Banco Ambrosiano loans them $1.3 billion. The Papal Bank contributes another $400 million. And it all disappears. Italian banking officials grow suspicious. The government closes in. Calvi hangs himself. And the Vatican, a sovereign state, refuses to comment, but does pay over to the Banco Ambrosiano $244 million. All of this was referred to with some dramatic embellishment in the movie Godfather Part 3. As for the alleged Masonic connection, the Grand Lodge of Italy had severed all ties with Gelli and his P2 Lodge 6 years before the scandal.
In fact, Masonry's financial dealings reveal a long history of giving, not taking. Masons all over the U.S. give more than $1 million a day to various charities. That's right, you heard me correctly, over $1 million a day. This look familiar? If you didn't know, Shriners are also Masons. About 120 years ago, a handful of Masons got together and decided to form a group with a rather impressive title, the Ancient Arabic Order of the Nobles of the Mystic Shrine. Their purpose was purely social, but it didn't stay that way. And today, even though they still manage to have quite a bit of fun, the shrine is world-renowned for its state-of-the-art Burns Institutes and its remarkable crippled children's hospital. Any crippled child is eligible to receive the best possible medical care, surgery, and prosthetics, and totally free of charge.
Freemasonry is not primarily a charitable organization. We claim to be an organization that's been formed for making good men better. Yet what better way is there to make a man better than to give him an opportunity to assist and to help his fellow man? Masonry has many, many organized charities, from the Royal Arch Research Foundation to the Knights Templar Eye Foundation to the beautiful and impressive Crippled Children's Orthopedics and Burns Hospital of the Shrine. But Masonic charity occurs in many other ways. Many, many lodges have their own particular charity. One lodge may take care of some brother's widow. Another may serve a Christmas dinner for the needy. A third may buy a wheelchair for some child that has MS. And yet, these are never heard. The organized charities are explained. The minor ones make the impression in their own community. But the Masons aren't seeking publicity. They're out to help. And what better way to do the work on earth than to help someone else?
Brotherly love, relief, and truth. Is this why so many tyrants fear and despise Masonry? More to the point, is this why so many great men have made it the focus of their lives?
It seems, after all, that the biggest secret about Masonry is that it has few secrets, and that these few words, signs, or grips of recognition serve in our free society as a reminder of those millions of Freemasons throughout history who have worked and even died for their belief in individual freedom. Are there still to this day Masons who meet in secret, pursuing their beliefs at risk of imprisonment, torture, even death? All we know for sure is that Masonry remains outlawed in the Soviet Union, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and elsewhere, and that in countries like Hungary, Poland, and the United Germany, where the Iron Curtain has parted, Masonic lodges are re-emerging with full memberships. Yet criticism and persecution continue. In the Soviet Union, for example, a black shirt organization of militant nationalists called the Pamyat, claiming 8 million members, have declared their primary goal is to fight the worldwide conspiracy of Jews and Freemasons.
Now, where have we heard this before? Here in the United States, a country founded by people who embrace the tenets of Masonry. We have the luxury, the constitutional right to choose. Albert Schweitzer said, "It is not enough merely to exist. Every man has to seek his own way, to make his own self more noble, and to realize his own true worth."
Masonry believes that every man should experience his own personal destiny. It's easy to find out all of the Masonic ritual by going to some library, by buying some kind of expose, but a man must experience the Masonic ritual himself before he can ever really be a Mason. A man has to be personally involved. Masonry is open to all men, yet it's not meant that every man should be a Mason. Some of them are physically, mentally, and morally unqualified. Some just don't have the desire, because to be a Mason begins in a man's heart.
When I set out on that journey to do research in Great Britain, that turned out to be the first of many, I had no idea what I was going to find out. I certainly didn't expect that I would find any connection between events in medieval history and Freemasonry. And so I began to learn about Freemasonry, and I had to learn because I didn't know anything about the subject. I was not a Freemason. I'm not a Freemason now. But I did take a good, hard, long look at the fraternity over a period of many years. But what I began to find was men in brotherhood protecting each other, fighting for individual freedom, fighting for freedom of religion, fighting for a philosophy and an attitude that could produce documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. A body of men who had proven that it was possible for men of different stations in life, different religious beliefs, to sit together in brotherhood and work together for the good of everyone. So I developed my own personal attitude toward Freemasonry, which is best summed up by the simple words, thank you.
God said, "Let there be light."
The story that Mozart's brothers had poisoned him was a lie perpetrated by the Nazis in an effort to discredit Masonry. In fact, Mozart's Masonic brethren had quietly helped him during his difficult financial times. Quietly, the way a Mason helps a brother in need. Though their good works are widely known, they themselves remain largely unseen, perhaps noticed only by a symbol that they wear. Like this ring.
At the same time Mozart was creating his masterpieces, the vision of the Founding Fathers created a masterpiece which joined for the first time the good of the many with the rights of the individual. Guided by the light of Masonry, they established a nation of people linked not by force, nor nationality, nor birth, but by a reverence for e pluribus unum, out of many, one. A century later, their Masonic brother Frederick Bartholdi created this lasting symbol of that vision, a beacon of moral truth illuminating each individual's path. The symbol for the future of the world might be the earth itself, seen without divisions of empires, kingdoms, or provinces. There is where the unseen journey, begun centuries ago, will continue among all the peoples of the earth, with whom we are one.